Do you have flex in your guide scope? Have you ever been halfway through a 5-minute sub and realized that you just lost a guide star? Today I'm switching to the Player One Xena 585M guide camera and securing the Evoguide 50 ED with new rings. Let's go! Welcome back to the channel. I'm Morten and I imaged the deep sky from my home observatory here at 63 degrees north. For the last few years, every sub I've taken, every image of a nebula or a galaxy has been guided by the Evoguide 50 ED and the ASI 120mm Mini. But recently I've come to realize that it has become the weakest link in my imaging train. I've also been searching a long time for a better way to secure the Evoguide 50 ED than the standard tube rings with the screws. This is the Player One Xena 585M. A guide camera built around the IMX585 sensor, utilizing the same Starvis 2 technology that is in Player One Astronomy deep sky cooled cameras. On paper, this guide camera should absolutely destroy the ASI 120mm Mini in every metric way that matters. I will pair that with my Evoguide 50 ED, new scope rings and mount it on the Askar SQA106. So this is the guide scope that I'm going to be using on the SQA106. I have already replaced the stock rings with the rings that clamp on and fixate the guide scope. On the guide scope right now is the original mounting accessories. This is for a normal Vixen dub plate, but on the SQA106 you have 3 finder's bases that is made for guide scope or other accessories using a finder shoe. I searched online and found this finder shoe that fits into one of the 3 finder bases on the SQA106, although I'm going to be using the one on top of the telescope, and that is also the largest one. And that is why this larger finder shoe will be perfect. But I do have a challenge because the mounting holes on top of the finder shoe here does not fit any holes on this. So what I will do is I will remove this one, keep the original plate under here, and I will drill a couple of holes to fit into the threaded holes on the finder shoe and making it mount like this, and this will simply slide onto the SQA106 top and secured by the thumb screws. So let's get started on the modifications. This is the original mounting block here, and this is the dovetail for the finder shoe base. And I don't have much to work with here. There are 2 M8 holes here and 1 M6 hole. Nothing lines up with the block here. And this is actually the plate that hold the rings. So I'm thinking of drilling 2 new holes, threading them with a threader to accommodate for the original screws here, and we will see if that works. The original screw is M4 for the holes here, and I'm going to use a 3.5mm drill, and I'm just going to mark on this here where to drill the holes. Make sure that you drill these exactly the same so you get a straight application for this. You don't want the guide scope to be tilting in either direction like this, so make sure it is straight on there. Threads completed, and now it is time to test with the screws here. And I would say that works great. I would say that it is a success. The plate is mounted and it is on straight there. So now I have a new mounting bracket here for the guide scope, and it's time to put it all together inside. Since this plate is covering all of the shoe here, I will have to attach this to the rings first, and that means I also have to detach the rings from the scope to start with. Then I will attach the bottom of the scope rings on the mounting plate here. Make sure to tighten these because you can't get to them later. Now that we have the bottom rings onto the mounting plate, let's put the entire assembly onto the shoe foot here that we just threaded. Make sure that these are also tightened because it is the same as the ones here with the telescope rings. You can't get to them after everything is assembled. Now we have the bottom part here of the assembly in total. So let's start putting this together. Taking the guide scope here, placing it on here like so. Position the rings here and simply attach them one by one. First get all four in and then we can work on tightening them as needed. Before tightening everything down, you may want to check that you have the guide scope centered in the rings. This is purely cosmetic, I would say, but you know, maybe you would like to have the logo here at somewhat same level. Well, it's a personal preference. Also make sure that you tighten the same amount across here, so there's no weird tension or anything on the scope itself. Make sure that the scope is firmly attached without using too much force on these clamps. You can't, or you shouldn't be able to close them completely here, so this is good enough, I would say. This is sturdy, it's not moving anything. This is going to be great. It is time to mount the guide scope onto the SQA106 using this shoe here, this long one, not the small ones behind here. So simply thread this on and then position it where you want it. Maybe I will have it as far in front as possible here. I could have it even longer here. I just need to reposition the thumb screws here in order to accommodate that. So I can simply unscrew this one if I don't want it back here, and unscrew this one. And then I can put it all the way up here if I want to. And that means one thumb screw up here. And one thumb screw down here. I think thumb screws are fine here. You could use normal screws maybe to get this tightened more, but this is not moving at all. If you tighten these enough, there's no flex or movement whatsoever in this installation now. So this is securely fastened here to the rig, I would say. So there we have it. The Evoguide 50 ED with custom tube rings mounted on top of the SQA106. And now it's time to take a look at the guide camera that I will be using for this setup. First thing you notice is that Player One includes a lot more in the box than ZWO does with the 120mm Mini. You get the camera itself, a 1.25-inch nose-piece adapter, a 2-meter USB-A to USB-B cable, an SD4 guide cable, which, I'll be honest, this will live in the box forever. I guide over USB through PhD2 and N.I.N.A, but it is there if you need it. They also include a bulb blower with a fine tip. I think every Player One camera comes with one of these. They are very useful. Strong jet of air, get dust off your sensor without touching it. And then the camera itself. The body uses Player One's hexagonal industrial design, same as their deep sky cameras. It's compact, it's solid, and the diameter is exactly 1.25 inches. That means it slides directly into a standard guide scope holder or off-axis guider. No adapters, no fuss. Xena is printed right on the housing. Nice details, consistent with the quality that I've come to expect from Player One. Now moving on to the more practical side, will it actually fit on the rig? My guide scope is the standard 50mm finder, the kind most of us use. The ASI 120mm Mini has been in the exact same spot for years. It weighs almost nothing, it's tiny, and it works. The Xena 585M is slightly heavier, 65 gram versus the 120mm Mini's roughly 40 grams, but in practice, on a guide scope this small, you won't notice the difference. There's not going to be any shift in balance, and for me, using the new Astro 1 harmonic mount, balancing is not really going to be an issue at all. What you do notice immediately is the size of the sensor. The 120mm Mini uses a 1/3 of an inch sensor that's 4.8 by 3.6 millimeters. The Xena 585M uses a 1.5 inch sensor that is 11.2 by 6.3 millimeters. That is not a small difference. That's a sensor with almost 4 times the surface area. So the first thing I did was to look at what does that actually means for guiding. So let's talk a little bit about guiding, not just look at marketing specs. The Xena 585M uses the Sony IMX585, that's Starvis 2 back illuminated 8.3 megapixels at 3856 by 2180. The 120mm Mini uses the AR0130CS 1.2 megapixel at 1280 by 960. That's nearly 7 times the resolution. But resolution alone isn't why you buy the guide camera. Pixel size, here's where it gets interesting. The Xena has 2.9 micron pixels, the 120mm Mini has 3.75 micron pixels. Smaller pixels means the camera can detect smaller movements of the star on the sensor. In the same guide scope, the Xena 585M is resolving guiding errors roughly 30% more precisely. That translates directly to tighter stars in your final image. Quantum efficiency. The Xena 585M peaks at about 91%. The 120mm Mini is around 80%. That 11% difference means the Xena sees fainter stars with the same exposure time. We all know that guide stars can be scarce from time to time, so this matters a lot. Read noise. The Xena 585 bottoms out at 0.7 electrons at high gain. The 120mm Mini sits around 4 to 6 electrons. That's an enormous gap. Lower read noise means cleaner guide star profiles, which means the centroid calculation in PhD2 is more accurate. Full well. 47,000 electrons on the Xena versus roughly 15,000 on the 120mm Mini. This matters less for guiding, but if you ever want to use this camera for short exposure deep sky imaging or lunar, you've got the dynamic range to do it. Now there are a few new features on the Xena 585M that go beyond just guiding. First, HDR mode. This is a feature of the IMX585 sensor that increases dynamic range while reducing read noise. For guiding, it's not critical, but for solar or lunar imaging, which this sensor is absolutely capable of, HDR mode is genuinely useful. Keep in mind, I'm only going to be using this camera for guiding right now. But knowing I can throw this on a solar rig and get clean high frame rate captures, that is a bonus. Second, DPS or dead pixel suppression. The camera analyzes dark frames internally, maps out bad pixels and corrects them using surrounding pixel data. It happens automatically in the camera firmware. No dark library needed. For guiding, this means cleaner star profiles with less hot pixel noise, confusing the centroid algorithm. Third, USB 3. The 120mm Mini runs USB 2, 480 megabit per second. The Xena 585M runs USB 3, 5 gigabits per second. For guiding exposures of 1 to 3 seconds, bandwidth doesn't really matter that much. But for high frame rate lunar or planetary imaging at full resolution, that 47 frames per second at 8.3 megapixels is only possible because of the USB 3 interface. And the build quality. Let's just say I'm very pleased that Player One Astronomy builds these cameras properly. Here you want to install the native camera driver if you're using Windows like I'm doing here. So I'm going to click download on that. That driver will take care of all Player One camera models. Then I'm going to scroll down to ASCOM drivers. It could be good to have it installed in case I want to use that in some software that can't use the native driver. Switching over to my download folder, I'm going to extract the camera driver. I'm going to extract the other two drivers for ASCOM, and that is the camera ASCOM driver. Starting with the native camera driver, I'm just simply double-clicking the application here and click install, and that should take care of itself. Just want to click that I actually want to install and trust the driver there, and then it finished quite quickly. Going back to the downloads here, and I'm going into the ASCOM camera driver, repeating the procedure and installing that on the PC. We're going to continue on with PHD2 configuration. This could be a little bit daunting for most people, but you are greeted with the first light wizard the first time you start PHD2 guiding, and this is the first time I started it on this PC, so we are going to go through the settings here. The first thing we do here is to select the guide camera. So right now I have a choice of cameras. If I select Player One camera, you can see that it will actually choose my main camera here. That looks correct, 3.76 in the pixel size. So I will go down and choose the first ASCOM driver camera from Player One, and that looks good. You can see that we have the correct camera. The pixel size is correct here, 2.9. You can choose a binning level here. For me, I'm not going to touch the default binning 1, but what is really important here is to set the correct focal length for the guide scope, and I have the Evoguide 50 ED, and that has a focal length of 242 millimeters. So I'm going to set that, and then I will click next. As for the mount, I don't have it connected yet because I don't have the mount. I will select the on-step ASCOM, and then PHD2 won't be able to determine the mount guide speed, but we can configure that later, so we don't really have to worry about it right now. You can select if you have any adaptive optics, which I don't. You can select a rotator, but we don't have a rotator, so I will keep that to none. And then you can enter a profile name for this, and Evoguide 50 ED and Xena 585M. You can build a dark frame library for it, and you can also choose to auto restore calibration if you want. Of course, it's best to calibrate every time, but you can set that for now, and that will be the default option, and then you can choose to recalibrate if you want before each session. Then you simply have to click finish, and we get some problems because we are not connected to the mount, and that's fine. So we're going to close that. You can build a dark library. I would suggest doing this, and I don't know now what I will be using in terms of exposure times, but since the MLastro1 is a harmonic drive, I might want to use very fast exposure times, so I'm going to select 0.2 as my minimum exposure, and the maximum is going to be 4 seconds. I will take 10 frames for each exposure time, and then I will I accidentally clicked reset there now, so maybe I will take this to 5, and then I will click start. Now you have to cover your guide scope. It is covered, so that's okay. Now it is building the dark library here, starting with the fastest speed, then going up into the list, and it will run through all of the settings here as to exposure time. Now the dark library has completed. It might have been a bit excessive to go all the way up to 5 seconds. That's never going to be used, but it doesn't take up that much space. Just make sure that you have fast enough speeds if you have a harmonic drive mount. Now the initial configuration has been done. You can click on the brain for advanced settings, and we are quickly going to go through the start settings here. And keep in mind, this is not going to be in-depth here because I don't have the mount and we can't test anything. So that will be a later video where we are dialing in the guiding here. Some basic configuration, global settings for language, software updates, file locations for guide logs and debug logs, if you want to have that. If you want to enable diagnostic image logging, you can have that on. And we have dither settings here, and I would recommend to keep that to random at a scale of 1. That is also the default setting here. Going over to camera settings, we have noise reduction. That will be to none. Time-lapse is 0, default setting. I'm not changing anything for the variable exposure delay. I'm going to keep this for now, auto exposure setting. I'm not 100% sure about this value now. It's not an 8-bit camera, it is a 12-bit, it's not a 16-bit, but seems like most ASCOM drivers will pad 12-bit data to 16, making the 65535 value to be the most correct one to use in my case. If you are using a 12-bit camera and the driver does not pad to 16-bit, you should have 4095 if it outputs 12-bit raw data. We will check that later to make sure it is the correct setting. You have some camera specific properties here. Pixel size should be auto sensed by the driver. You can select a disconnect non-responsive camera after seconds. Keep it to 15, I would say. Binning 1. And there's no cooling on this camera, so you don't have to set any cooler configuration here. Next tab is the guiding, and this will have to be dialed in, I would say, later, but I will go through the settings that are recommended by MLastro. So minimum star HFD and maximum star HFD will be 1.5 and 10. I personally will remove beep on lost star. I won't hear it anyway because it is out in the observatory. If I'm doing a remote desktop, it will just be annoying. I will see it anyway. The mass detection, I keep it to default 50, and I have minimum star SNR 6. Use multiple stars. That should be on. If it's not on in your installation by default, you will select it. And then keep the auto selection frame downsample to auto. The calibration settings here, 242 is the focal length. Calibration step, that will need to be adjusted. Set it to 200 to start with an harmonic mount. Auto restore calibration. Assume deck orthogonal to RA. That will have to be enabled for the MLastro 1 mount. And the use deck compensation is default on. Keep that on. We have some shared parameters. Always scale images on. Fast recenter on. Keep that to on. Reverse deck output after meridian flip. This is another setting that you need to enable for the MLastro mount. So check that also, and keep enable mount guide output and stop guiding when slew to on. So all of the shared parameters should be set to on here. Going into algorithms, we will select the right ascension algorithm, and the one recommended here is the predictive PEC algorithm. And this will also be adjusted later on, but I will set some initial settings here recommended. So we're starting with 100, 100 for predictive weight and reactive weight. Minimum movement 0.2. Periodic length, this will have to be adjusted. I will set it to 430. This might change later, but auto adjust period is recommended to be off in start. And I'm setting the retain model to 0, keeping max RA duration at 2500. As for the declination resist switch, I'm keeping that. Aggressiveness to 100. Minimum move pixels 0.45. And I'm going to deselect and remove fast switch. And I'm not enabling any backlash compensation here, since we don't actually have that on the harmonic mount. So these are the starting settings here, and it will be covered later. So let's just click OK here for now, and then we are going to go into N.I.N.A and make sure that the settings for PhD to guiding is OK. I'm going to disconnect the camera here and close that, and then I will close PhD 2 and I will open N.I.N.A here. Once I am here in N.I.N.A, I will go into equipment in the top left corner again, and I will go down to guider. And here I'm going to select PhD 2, and I will have to click configure. You can configure some options here regarding dithering, and the default dither pixels is 5. You don't want to enable dither in RA only. We are going to keep the settle pixel tolerance, maximum settle time, and timeout. Guiding start timeout, and ROE percentage to find star. So the thing that you might want to consider adjusting here is the dither pixels. It's default 5. I'm going to keep that at default right now, and then I'm going to connect PHD2 and make sure that it is starting. Now, you might want to dial in your dithering settings here in N.I.N.A. This used to be hard because the rule of thumb is you want a dither pixel setting here that will effectively move the telescope 10 pixels in the main camera image. This is important. Don't mix it up with the guide camera image. And you had to manually calculate this back and forth. But right now in the N.I.N.A version that I have, the latest, this information is already available, and it will dynamically change it when you are changing settings here. So you can see your guider pixel scale here is 2.47 arc seconds per pixels. Your guider dither pixels is 5, and this is the setting you have up here. Your camera pixel scale is 1.52 arc second per pixel, and your camera dither pixels will move it 8.11. Now the rule of thumb, as I said, is you want this value to be 10 or around 10. And the setting that you have here is multiplied by the default dither pixel setting that you have in PHD2. If you remember, that was 1 by default, and I recommend having that to 1 and change all settings in here, otherwise it will be a bit annoying. So if the goal is to get 10 pixels here on the main camera, we can change this to 4 and see what happens. Then it will go down, and we can change it to 6 and it will go up. So if we change it to 7, it's 11.36. Maybe we will keep it at 6 pixels here, and that will mean that I almost have the 10 pixels of camera dither pixels that I need. So I think I'm going with a dither pixel setting of 6. If you want, you can change the guide graph RA and the deck colors. I would keep them right now. I'm not changing anything here. You can change the scale of this if you want it to be a little more suitable for your needs. I wouldn't change any other setting here, leave them at default. And that actually wraps up the PHD2 in N.I.N.A settings. I've unboxed it, I've mounted it, I've gone through every specification that matters. It's not just a small upgrade from the ASI 120mm Mini, it is a different class of camera. Now in this first part, I'm sorry to say that I can't do any actual testing because it's still too bright here at 63 degrees north, and I'm still waiting for the last parts to my observatory upgrade. As soon as those arrive and everything is in place and I have some darkness back, I will come back with a follow-up to check and see if it actually holds up in actual guiding. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments, please leave them down below. And as always, until the next video, keep chasing the faint stuff.